And welcome into the Fatheads Eyewear Studios for the next episode of Unverified. Tony Donohue, David Land, Kyle is with us as well. He is your voice on the show here on YouTube. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe as well. So much racing content, all types of motorsports to talk about here on tonight's episode. And again, we are here every Tuesday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. David, I know you're chomping at the bits to talk about a lot of things here this evening. We welcome your comments in the YouTube chat as well, but welcome to yet another edition of the show. We got these cool new blue mics.
I know. You're welcome. Amazon coming through a week later. These were supposed to be here last week, and if we could ever go through another episode where we don't talk about the mics again, I would be extremely happy.
This is it.
I'll tell you what. It was a beautiful day here in Indianapolis, and I'm getting ready and excited for the month of May. That's what it felt like. I was listening to some old radio broadcasts today as I prepared for my trip tomorrow. I get on an airplane and head to the 12 hours of Sebring. Going to be really excited. My first race of the season, believe it or not, in person. So I'm really excited for that. We're going to be talking about that and a lot more. This is going to be our most diverse show in terms of content yet.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I was watching earlier today the 1993 Bump Day with Bobby Rahal, and Derek Daly was a part of that. And I think today's Derek Daly's birthday, so shout out to him. But, yeah, it's always good when it's spring, and you and I both live very close to the Speedway. So it's like, okay, let's open up the windows and let's watch some old races and watch a few qualifying highlights as well. So plenty to talk about when it comes to IndyCar as well as the upcoming 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. But starting first off on our show is one of our favorite segments, and we call it Dude Bro Sources. And there is always news. There is always a rumor mill in motorsports, especially IndyCar. It never starts soon enough. We're only a week into the season, or one race into the season, and we already have news, possible things that could go down, entries of the Indy 500, team news, driver news. But, David, I'm going to throw it over to you for the first bit of Dude Bro Sources on tonight's episode.
You know what's sad, Tony? I forgot we started the season there for a second. Yeah. I was like, wait, we're waiting for the first race. Oh, wait, no, we already ran the first race.
Well, don't worry. IndyCar got mentioned plenty on the Fox NHRA drag race that we will get to.
I will talk about that later on the show. So I've had a few conversations over the course of time, and I had one that definitely was intriguing this week. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm going to keep it kind of vague because I want to keep on good terms with everybody through May at least. And then maybe through May. We'll get a little more specific after May. But I heard something from a pretty good source that I'd heard from other pretty good sources, actually as far back as the kind of final third of last season, which is there's at least one and possibly a couple of IndyCar teams that would consider selling. Now, one of those in particular is very real, the possibility of them selling. It's a team, I guess the hint I would give would be it's a team that struggled with sponsorship in recent
That really narrows
months.
It down.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, you could probably think of 5 or 6 teams, but that's why we're keeping it broad.
That's more than half the field.
We're going to be friends with everybody, and we're just going to accuse everybody, and it's up to the people to try to figure it out. But I've heard that. So I wouldn't expect to hear anything concrete on that, if it ever even becomes concrete at all. I mean, again, when we talk about rumors, these are things that sometimes can boil behind the scenes and either fizzle out or come over the pot. You never know what's going to happen. But it's something that's definitely being talked about behind the scenes, and we're going to kind of have to wait and see if anything happens. But again, until you get past the month of May in the Indianapolis 500, a lot of the silly season stuff, when we're talking about 26, doesn't start until Detroit, which is still weird because it's like that's only a third of the way through the season, but who knows?
You know, and I think we look at IndyCar as a whole up and down the paddock, and you look at some of the sponsorship that really isn't there. We talk about, as you mentioned earlier off the air, a lot of B2B deals and what it entirely looks like. Let me ask you this as far as maybe the timing of selling your team off. We know charters. We know the charter system. Obviously, a team like Prema is going to look for 1, if not 2 charters at the end of the season. Talk about the timing when it comes to this team and possibly others being up for sale here maybe over the summer.
Well, the thing about the charters is where things get complicated, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think in some ways, if you look at the market, I think Prema would probably pay for a charter but they bought 5 brand spanking new DW12 chassis, if we can call them the DW12 chassis new. Sorry, I'll put $1 in the bucket. But
it's your favorite car of all time, isn't it?
Listen, they've invested quite a bit. So if someone was selling a team, it might not interest an organization like Prema because they're looking only for charters. And that's kind of what puts some of these IndyCar teams in a weird place, because I always thought the charter is going to have the most value to a potential buyer right now, because or a seller, because you could sell it to Prema and get them in the field and go take the field from 27 to 25 and have them all be charter teams. And Prema wants one because right now they can't make any money from IndyCar themselves. Of course, they can make it from sponsorship and other deals like that, but that's what's going to be weird. And what I don't really understand about the potentiality of teams selling is that you almost have to not only find someone to buy the charter, but you need to find someone that will buy all of the equipment and the buildings and everything. And that's what's weird. And that's what I've always said about the charters, is I just don't see a whole bunch of people lining up to do that. Maybe you might get one conglomerate or organization, but I almost feel like you're going to have 1 or 2 sales, and then the pool of IndyCar teams are going to be what they are. It's going to be your 25 teams and cars, and that's going to be it. Again, we're not going to really know. It's all speculation until we actually get to the point where a team, signs on the dotted line and sells, whether it's selling their charters or selling other parts of their team. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and it's going to be a developing story at some point, whether it's this year, next year, who knows.
Continuing with the topic of timing on this possibility, which I know your sources are good on, what if I'm a team owner, or if I'm coming in and I want to buy an IndyCar team and I'm looking around, okay, what makes sense? Would it make more sense to look into buying a team, let's say in 2028 with the new car, as into buying a team right now where you are basically renting the DW12 chassis for 2 seasons, possibly 3?
Depends on what your business model is.
Yeah.
I don't think, the unfortunate reality of current racing is that the car is such a small, it's weird because it's such a big monetary investment, but it's such a small commodity or small asset in your business. I almost think that, and that's, again, what I can't really wrap my head around about current day racing, is that it's not really about the cars or the racing anymore. It's about everything else around it. And so I think you probably could create a business model that would, you could just buy, because obviously Prema is doing that, right? They bought cars with a 2027 deadline when they first bought the car, so that's 2 years. Now it might be 3, might be 4, who knows? But that, it's all about your business model. And so if someone came in with a different way of looking at owning a team, owning an IndyCar team, or a vision for doing so in a different way, well, it doesn't really matter if you spend a couple of million to buy the equipment. It's because you can make your money in other ways.
How do you look at this as far as we do have Prema that came in this year? Obviously, it spent a lot of money, had some hiccups down at St. Pete, but I think you would expect that for a team in their first IndyCar weekend. I think 2 talented, very capable drivers. When you look at a team wanting to sell, and maybe possibly, as you mentioned, other teams wanting to sell, if we have people or companies, whatever it is, that want to buy into IndyCar, does that show that it's healthy, that people are wanting to buy? Or does it show that the sport might not be as healthy as what we think if teams are trying to, let's say, recoup some of their money by selling?
I don't know if it necessarily means anything. I don't know if it means, it definitely means something, but I don't know if it means, a hard, everything's great, or it's a hard, everything's. Look, at the end of the day, what's happening in IndyCar right now is that you have got a lot of very old team owners. Yeah. And some of them, or team owners who are spending a lot of money and not getting a lot of ROI. There are definitely different scenarios where a team owner might want to get out for one reason or another. It doesn't necessarily mean the sport as a whole, because we've had teams come and go for years and years and years in all sorts of different peaks and valleys of IndyCar racing. I don't think you can judge the entire sport based on whether or not one team sells or wants to sell, or if one team isn't financially solid. It's a whole broad, spectrum, and that's how you really judge it. So I wouldn't necessarily judge it on whether one team or not is going away or coming back.
When you go back to last year, probably halfway through the season, and obviously IndyCar had that, 3.5 week break because of the Olympics, and the rumors around the paddock were that Ed Carpenter Racing was shutting down.
Remember
these?
I remember that.
And then it was like And then I mentioned to Ed in Milwaukee, I said, look, I'm just going to let you know what I heard. And he goes, oh, yeah, we shut down for like 2 or 3 days, let the guys go home and not think about racing and have a vacation during the summer. But no, it wasn't anything like that. And then what do we learn? Turns out they had found an owner. They have a whole new look in 2025. So hopefully for the teams that want to sell, we do, or IndyCar finds capable ownership in teams and people and companies that want to be a part of the sport and move it and grow it forward.
It is funny that you brought that up because that was something that was a hot rumor. You mentioned it for a long time that Ed Carpenter was going to sell. I mean, I remember hearing that back in like May of last year. And you kind of go back and forth. You go, well, it makes sense, doesn't make sense. And then, of course, Ed talked to you and said that wasn't the plan. But then all of a sudden he sells part of the team. So, it's funny like how rumors, whether or not you want to, accept that a rumor is true or not, more often than not, it's true. It just kind of depends to what degree. And that wasn't a sky is falling thing. Ultimately, it was a great situation for Ed. He found an investor that was willing to buy into his team, keep his name on the building, keep going, and potentially have a much stronger program. I mean, after St. Pete, I would say Ed Carpenter Racing is a much stronger position than we were last year.
Well, despite how much money you have or don't have, you still want to recoup on your investments inside of IndyCar, and we see that throughout the paddock up and down. Obviously, you could use Dale Coyne as an example and having ROI on the car and hopefully getting some funding behind Renus VK. Like, yes, you love it, and a lot of these owners love it and put their money into it and love to be a part of it, but at the end of the day, if you're a businessman, you don't get rich by throwing money into something that you're not getting a return out of. So, that's it. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that when it comes to a team possibly selling, and we'll let our fans kind of put their heads and their brains together on.
Speculate away, everybody. Gentlemen, start your speculation.
A lot of people are thinking of the Dry and Reinbold Cusick operation shopping around. That's what's going down.
I mean, they would be in the market for a charter.
Yes.
But they have equipment. That's kind of where it's weird. They even have road course equipment. They theoretically could go right now if they wanted to.
So is it a all-in package? Let's say Tony Donohue wants to come in and buy out said team, and am I going in more than likely? Or let's say I'm selling. Let's say Unverified Racing is selling their 2-team IndyCar program. Am I selling everything that I have from the charter, from the chassis to a building if I have it? Or am I saying, all right, I can sell my charter over here for this amount and make some good money off of it. Then I can sell the rest or my building or my cars, whatever it is. Is it all one package, do you think, David? Or do you think that you can kind of separate some things to sell to different people?
I think you could. You could sell the charters.
Probably based on demand.
Yeah, and I think there's demand. Well, I mean, we know for a fact there's demand for cars right now. So you could sell the cars. You could sell the charters separately, potentially to a Prema or Dry and Reinbold. And, if you're still a racing team, you want to keep going, there's nothing stopping you from hanging on to your building and some of your pit equipment and stuff, going IMSA racing, going NASCAR racing. There's a lot of Trans Am. There's all sorts of different things that you could do, right? You could keep in the sport. I mean, we talked about Brian Hurt Autosport, last week. There's a great example of a team that downsized from an IndyCar program, sold to Andretti, kept all the assets, and went to IMSA and found a factory program and have had a lot of success. They're moving to a new shop. So and potentially having an Indy 500 entry. Their name has been mentioned a couple of times for the Genesis GTP program. Like you can bottom out and come back. It's all about your business model. It's your motivation to make it work. And if you don't want to make it work anymore, then sell the whole damn thing. You know what I mean?
Other Dude Bro sources from today. You didn't know about this, but IndyCar did have a test down in Barber in Birmingham. I had heard about it. I didn't know exactly when it was, and honestly, I didn't know it was today until last night when Devlin DeFrancesco posted that he was on a road trip. And didn't say where it was, but his engineer was in the car, and I kind of looked. He had a photo of like the dashboard of how long it was going to take. So I said, okay, it's obviously going to be Barber. What I heard about that, I was actually sent a video from a fan who actually drove to attend the test. I don't know if they snuck in; they just happened to be there.
You can watch from the museum at Barber, much like Indianapolis.
So there you go. So he was at the museum in Barber, and he had sent me a video of a car into the tire barrier. And it happened to be Felix Rosenqvist, and a pretty tough crash. He walked away from it, so that's
what
good
happened,
to see.
Tony? What happened?
Got a little airborne, from what I've been told, but walked away. I think is what is the most important part about that. But yeah, sometimes, and we've seen it. We've probably seen it way too many times. I mean, you think of Simon Pagenaud at Mid-Ohio.
It's a shank car too. It's the 60.
Yeah, well, hopefully, what was it, a brake issue with Simon a few years ago? Hopefully, it was just something
I think
totally
he
different.
lost the brakes. At least the team blamed the brakes for that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So testing today, didn't really get to see any of the speeds, but certainly glad that Felix is okay after that, and. We're kind of in that 3-week period, and I'm glad there was a test and maybe a little bit to talk about. And then you get thermal coming up next week, and then a couple more weeks, or 2 more weeks off, and then you get Long Beach, and then almost a full month off before going to Barber, which I believe is like May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Yes. We'll have the Indy 500 test in between,
and then the Indy 500 test will in between. So we'll be out there for that, obviously covering that.
But then it's gonna be flat out from May 1st through June 15th. I mean, I don't think there's a week off between. Maybe there is. No, there isn't.
No, that's
between Barber and Gateway. It is.
Yeah, speaking of Devlin, we were discussing that. It's like, it's kind of you're kind of waiting to get going right now. And then once you get to that Indianapolis 5, really once you get to Long Beach, it's kind of you get the Indy 500 test, and then maybe you get a week off, but then it's straight into the month of May, the Grand Prix, then the 109th Indianapolis 500. We certainly want to bring in Kyle for this next portion of Unverified here inside of the Fatheads Eyewear Studios. You and I attended Supercross. I know Kyle was there. Kyle had his family in town for Supercross here over the weekend at Lucas Oil Stadium on Saturday night. I kind of grew up going to some outdoor stuff like Red Bud up in Michigan, but I've never actually been to Supercross. I liked it. I'll let you guys get into the nuts and bolts of it, but I shot Doug Bowles and Marcus Erickson a text because I knew that they were both there. And I said, these intros, I mean, if they get the audio right, because the audio was too low during the intros. But
that's a Lucas Oil problem.
Yeah.
How are we feeling about Daniel Jones as the quarterback for the – sorry, never mind.
Whoa. That's a whole nother – we got to get Kenny Moore in here. We'll discuss a few things. I thought the intros were badass because as somebody who only had heard of a few of those riders, and I enjoyed it, I kind of could pick out there was like a little specific
there was
intro.
Leader light.
Do what?
The leader light on the bikes.
Well, that was super cool. Yeah. That was awesome. But no, I'm talking about just the intros where they brought a few of the top drivers out and they had a little 10 to 15-second video of what they like to do, where they're from. That's how we learned about the guy.
The cowboy. I love the cowboy.
There was a guy that came out to Alice in Chains, so that was super cool. So I thought the spectacle, the fire, the intro was well done by Supercross. Kyle, I know that you were there, and that's something that you like to follow.
Yeah, like I'm a big Supercross guy, so I was really interested when I saw that you guys went, what your thoughts were. Because I sort of knew what to expect because David and I actually talked about this. All the work I do with Car Chaser, we've kind of used Supercross as our vision of what we want to turn karting into. And so to see it all in person, like you said, like the rider intros with the videos, the pyro, even what I thought was crazy was before every single heat in the main event, they had the video that went on the screen that was 20 of the best riders riding for 20 minutes plus 1 lap. Championship points are on the line. The informational stuff that tells the fans, and then they perfectly line it up to the 30-second board going up, and then you have David Lee over the speaker just being like, this is the 450 main, and then the music's playing as they start the race. And it's all coordinated as a show, so seamlessly. I thought it was something.
It was well done. It was very, as you mentioned, Kyle, it was very informative for the average fan that may like any form of motorsports that wanted to go check that out. The racing I thought could have been a little bit better, but still, I mean, even just what those guys go through on a bike and hitting those jumps and the timing and. We saw it with Deegan. In his, he fell off the bike. Now he still recovered. And I think finished third, but he went through that fence. There was a partial fence.
Drove under a catch fence.
Yeah, that was crazy. And we kind of sat a little bit up top in the 500 level, but we were able to see. We were on. I know people. Oh, you're just cheap. Well, I like going to an NFL game and being able to see what's going on and be able to see. Okay, this guy ran this way. Up top at Supercross, you're kind of looking right over the top. You can see what's going on. You can see where the yellows are and why. because they don't ever. I mean, they have I guess you would call a local yellow when a rider goes off or goes down. But I thought the entire thing was super entertaining, and I really enjoyed it.
The fans make Supercross. I don't know how you get that magical sauce.
Yeah.
But the fact, I mean, that was a huge crowd. I mean, it was almost a Colts game in there. The upper level was a little patchy, but that's understandable, right? I mean, it was
40,000 is a good estimate. 45
at least. I would probably go closer to 50 because Lucas Oil holds 66, right? So, I mean, I think it was 90% full, maybe 85% full. I mean, it was huge. It was a huge crowd, and I think the key that I noticed. We talked about the Cowboy on the KTM. Don't remember his name, but I know Cowboy on KTM.
Aaron Plessinger.
Aaron Plessinger.
Plessinger. You got to get that right if you're going to call him the Cowboy.
The Cowboy.
He's from Ohio, by the way.
He's from Ohio.
So my dad's favorite writer.
Derek. Shout out Derek Cuthbertson. Here was the thing that I liked about the intro video for him. And it was kind of what triggered a lot of what we're discussing. I said, Tony, we got to talk about this on the show because when they showed his intro, I knew everything I needed to know about his personality from that intro video. And it was 15 seconds of clip of just this guy on his ranch, with his shirt off with a cowboy hat. And, you hear all the girls cheering and you go, oh, this is so easy.
Yeah.
And I don't, and it's not easy. It's tough to get that. And it's tough to kind of, one of the things that Supercross does have that is, I think, tough for IndyCar to replicate, not impossible, but tough, is the manufacturer loyalty.
Okay.
People were cheering for KTM. People were cheering for Honda. People were cheering for Yamaha. They were wearing the shirts. That is tough because essentially this is like Formula One for dirt bikes, right? There is no higher level than that. So it was an amazing experience, and there's some things to learn, especially in the presentation. To your guys' point, but I would like to see IndyCar steal a little bit from him.
I think within the presentation is probably the best thing to take notes on. The other thing that I picked up on, because I was there the whole day, we went out at noon and walked around the Fan Fest and did the whole thing. There were two things that I picked up that I wanted to ask you guys about and talk about. The first thing that I noticed that I thought was huge was the merchandise sucked, which the merchandise was not very good, which was surprising.
Yeah.
And it made me realize something because I had my little sister was there. She's 13, has never seen a Supercross race. And so we're asking her, who's your favorite rider? Who do you want to root for? And it would have been a lot easier to figure that out if they had cool merch. Because then it'd be like, oh, that T-shirt's cool. I like that guy. And it made me think of IndyCar, too. Because when we take her to the IndyCar races, there's nothing in the merchandise tent outside of the regular IndyCar merch that's, cool and appealing to a young person to be like, oh, that shirt's sick. I want to root for this driver. So that made me think of stuff. And then the other thing that I thought about, and I totally am blanking now, but the merchandise, David, Tony, what do you
Merchandise was terrible. It was
expensive too.
There was two riders, and one of them was retired. There was Ricky Carmichael.
Yeah.
And then who else was the other? I don't even remember who the other
They
rider
had some
was.
Deegan shirts. They had a few other shirts.
It was Deegan.
Let me go back to the point about the intros and kind of tying it into the Indianapolis 500. Here's what I want to see. This is my dream. It's never going to happen. You remember back in the mid-2000s, they had Stain and Three Doors Down?
2005.
2005. Yeah. I think it was back-to-back years for the
I
free
know
driver
exactly
intros.
where you're going with this.
So can we get Motley Crue out there to play Kickstart My Heart for the intros? Fox airs it. And then how hard would it be to run in the morning on the video boards of the 500 a 10 to 15 second or 15 to 20 second video of each driver? Because how many people that are casual fans come in and they take a spotter guide, they slice it up, they put in a hat, and I'm going to pull out whoever it is, and that's who I'm going to root for because that's how I can maybe, win some money. So if you have an intro where you can say, oh, that's cool, this person did this or this person did that, I think that would go a long way in getting fans more engaged, keeping them engaged, watching the race, and then maybe even watching next week in Detroit.
That's crazy. You know what you're describing? You're describing the Paul Page, show horse jumper, Buddy Lazier as a skier.
Let's do it.
This is the thing that I advocate for all the time.
Eddie Cheever's
a writer.
Writing, he's not published as yet. They're all too private.
Yeah, much too personal.
Much too personal.
Come on, you gotta know the Christmas movie. You got to know that back to front. You got to go jumper, unpublished as of yet. Buddy Lazier's a skier. He even tested a Formula One bike.
Didn't that was Mario?
That was Mario. Yeah.
Yeah, and then were they talking about Michael being a child?
Yeah,
child's
he wrote
book writer?
a children's book for his kids, Marco
Sorry,
and Marissa.
I'm just used to Paul Page saying challenge or back in the fight.
I love that, man.
I figured out my second point. I don't know why I was blinking, but something that so when I went into Fan Fest, that's basically like the paddock, right?
And that's outside, right? That's
Yeah.
outside of Luke. Okay,
There used to be an Indy Fan Fest, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, but and they called it
Monster
Fan Energy Fan Fest.
Yep.
Yep. They stole the thing.
IndyCar should sue them.
But
no, just kidding.
It made me realize so I went and it was my first Supercross race I've ever been to. So I was like, I want to meet Ken Roxon. I got a little number plate. I was like, maybe I can get his autograph. And you would think with it being like open tents, like in karting, like how you just have tents, it'd be pretty easy to meet riders, and it wasn't. Like riders in the Fan Fest were actually pretty inaccessible unless they were like privateers. If they were like the factory guys you wanted to meet, they were pretty much inaccessible. And it made me think of something. It made me think of when we talked to Pato O'Ward, and he wanted, IndyCar drivers to be less accessible.
Yeah.
They wanted to be, and it
about
made
to
me
bring
think
that
about
up.
it because I'm like, I am in the paddock, like we are right there next to the bikes. We're still close, but like, man, like these guys are superstars. I can't freaking meet a single one of them because they're just like gone. So it made me think of that point, and I want to know what your thoughts were on that.
I don't. Look, because you can go to any IndyCar race and meet pretty much any driver you want. It's the same way at times, I believe, at IMSA races. Are these drivers too accessible? Maybe there is a lure to Formula One, like, you see people that are like trying to get through a fence to get a photo of a Formula One driver. Are these drivers too accessible? And would there be some kind of like, you want what you can't have, you want the access that you can't have? And I know in NHRA it's a whole open season when you go to an NHRA event, but are drivers inside a lot of these series just too accessible?
There's an argument to be made, and I will say
there's no right and wrong answer, I don't think. Because one person is going to say, no, I love going, I love getting all my autographs, I love getting all my stuff signed, and being able to meet the drivers, and that's part of it. That's what part of it that makes me keep coming back.
Hold on, let me say something that we always hear. Well, you already have that audience.
Wow.
They're not going to, here's the thing, like they're going to bark, and I guarantee you they're going to bark in the Facebook groups about us saying this, that the drivers are too accessible, because they're going to, well, I want to, and I understand, like I love to meet my favorite driver, but my favorite driver, growing up was Buddy Lazier, and he never showed up, it wasn't his fault, but he was never at what was that, not Carb Day, Community Day.
Yep.
He was never at the Community Day, he was inaccessible, and it made me just value Buddy Lazier even more. I got to meet Scott Sharp, and I got to meet, I don't even remember, Robbie McGee, Buzz Calkins. And so I think there is something to that where you can create a cult of personality around these guys where, well, I might not be able to see Joseph Newgarden. I might not be able to get closest to Pato O'Ward. Who are some of the biggest drivers who come to the Indianapolis 500? Kyle Larson, Fernando Alonso. Hard to get, hard to find, hard to get an autograph of. When you find them, get them, meet them, take a picture with them, it's valuable. It's more valuable than, I would say, an IndyCar driver that you can just go to the autograph session and get. The last thing I'll say about this is, when do IndyCar drivers have that celebrity, that aura around them? It's at the Indianapolis 500. When are they least accessible? The Indianapolis 500. There's a $150 paywall. Hey, the bronze badges came out today. $150 paywall to go see the drivers.
Yeah.
No free pub, David.
And last thing on like the Supercross stuff is that made me think, like, at a minimum, what maybe should start happening is the Fan Fest tickets were limited. Like, they were sold out day of the race. We bought ours the night before. They weren't, like, hard to buy the night before, but, like, they were limited. So maybe start limiting the amount of paddock you give away. And also, it's not like meeting the riders was impossible. They still did autograph sessions.
Yep.
But, like, I wanted to meet Ken Roxon, and they gave away wristbands for the autograph session, and they only gave away 60.
Which is very NASCAR-ish. Like, NASCAR will have a driver for 15 minutes at their hauler.
Maybe instead of a full field autograph session, we give out wristbands to like the biggest fans that like really want to meet them, and make it like known of when you get your wristband and when you do it.
Yes.
I think that's probably the best strategy instead of just saying like no more, don't go full F1 now.
So
right?
I don't hate the
think you
fact
can.
that IndyCar has autograph sessions at every race. I don't hate that. When I was a kid, as mentioned, I would stand there in Gasoline Alley trying to get autographs, and you never know who you're going to get. One day you got AJ Foyt, and then the next day you got whoever, And I remember, like, I could never get Tony Stewart Menard's car. And I was like 9 or 10 years old, and his PR lady came over and asked for my address. And I was like, I can't give that away. You're a stranger. And then she was like, no, I'm with Tony Stewart. And then I actually got an autographed, personalized to Tony Stewart hero card. But I think there has to be a level of, like, you want what you can't have, right? You want to be able to get that access. You want to be able to, get that behind-the-scenes type look. And, I mean, dude, St. Pete, they were selling paddock passes. And, I mean, it was so damn packed down there because everybody and their brother who just upgraded for 75 or 150, whatever it was, to be in the paddock. It was just everybody was down there. But I do think that there is something to be said about the fact that, like, hey, I don't know who I'm going to meet. And, like, Dario was so hard to meet. He would be on his golf cart from the garage to his car on pit road, and it was, like, very hard to even meet him. So the couple times you did, you really appreciated it a little bit more. But I think it's you can look at it one way and say it's cool that as a fan you're going to go and if you don't meet your favorite driver at an IndyCar weekend, it's probably your fault.
Yeah,
you probably did something wrong. But I do think there's something about that, like these drivers. I don't know if it's privacy. I don't know if that's the right term, but being hard. It's hard to get access to them. I think there's something to be said about that as well. And that could be a topic here on the show for another day. All right, David, you're leaving tomorrow. I've got to take you to the airport. You are going down to the 12 hours of Sebring. There's a lot to discuss. Your IMSA Riz is going to be alive and well this weekend. I know this is a big event inside of the IMSA world. I don't know too much about it. I would love for you to introduce me, sell me on what to watch this weekend, and I believe there's some characteristic controversy going on inside of IMSA as well.
So, 12 hours of Sebring. It's to me, it's the classic endurance race in the United States. It's actually, to me, it's a little more historic.
I heard it's a massive party.
It's a massive party. They burn a couch every year at the I mean, it is the closest thing in a lot of ways here in the U.S. to the Snake Pit.
Okay.
Green Park at Sebring's crazy party. I think it's a little more historic than Daytona. A lot of people, I think it's more prestigious than Daytona. A lot of people will disagree with me on that. But the 12 hours of Sebring is an awesome race. Obviously, 12 hours, which a lot of people will say, 12 hours, that's not as hard as 24 at Daytona.
Do some influence and tell me what time this weekend. Are we going green? What are we doing here?
Green flag at 11 a.m. I believe it starts on Peacock. I think there's some of it on USA Network. If you're outside of the U.S., wink, get yourself on YouTube because they're streaming it live on YouTube. The Sebring is an awesome racetrack. It's built on an old World War II airfield, so it's extremely bumpy. A lot of people say 12 hours at Sebring is harder than 24 hours at Le Mans or Daytona, and it is a true endurance test. It tests the new cars, it tests the old cars, it tests the drivers because it's really difficult. There's a few storylines going into this weekend. The biggest one is the Aston Martin Valkyrie. The first time a car built to the European rules, the Le Mans hypercar rules, is racing in IMSA. Really exciting. A V12 Cosworth engine powers that machine. It is naturally aspirated, and it doesn't have a hybrid. So it's noisy, it's grunty, it's everything you want in a race car. We're excited to see that. It already debuted in Qatar at the World Endurance Championship. Wasn't super competitive there. We're not really expecting it to be competitive on debut at Sebring, and in fact, IMSA took a little bit of power away from it from the previous test. But just from the sound alone, a lot of people are going to be excited for that. We're excited to see if the Corvette BMW rivalry continues. I think you might remember the bird coming out of the car with Tommy Milner. I bought a T-shirt. That
was all the talk coming out of Daytona.
1,000%, and we'll see because there was a lot of bad blood that I think is unresolved between the Paul Miller Racing BMW and the Pratt & Miller Corvette, and that's not the only controversial thing in the GT division right now.
Yeah.
What do you know about Rexy? Just give me. So you are going in blind to this.
Yeah.
What do you know about Rexy?
Well, I know that there was some controversy last year here at Indy. I did learn that. I learned that they have a Rexy mascot that walks up and down. That hopefully nobody puts fart spray in the air hole. And then something happened at Daytona, I believe.
They knocked the grill off.
There was a crash. So. That's what I know about Rexy, and I can't say either of those things are good.
What is Rexy?
Rexy's a dinosaur car.
Rexy is a dinosaur car.
Is it a?
It's a Porsche.
Porsche.
It's a Porsche.
Okay.
It's a Porsche
I didn't know
dinosaur
that.
car.
Yep, okay.
So So a little bit of background
Who are the
on
drivers?
on Rexy. I don't actually know the drivers.
Okay.
Tony, does the name Spike mean anything to you?
Yeah, who's Spike?
Spike Gilhausen.
Spike Gilhouse. That's a crazy reference. No, Spike is the LMP2 brother.
It's purple.
It's
Yeah.
purple. Car.
Okay, yes.
It's a
Okay.
dragon.
Looks like
Yep.
Spyro the dinosaur.
It looks a
Remember
little bit
that?
like
Yep.
Spyro.
Yep.
You know who Spyro is, right?
No, but I've seen. But when we walked the grid on IMSA race day, I did see that. Yes, obviously you're not going to miss those cars. So yes, so they are related.
They are related. It's the same. So
Same
it's
team?
The same team. It's a team called AO
Because
Racing.
there's like 17 different classes you can run inside of an IMSA
there are
race.
4 classes in an IMSA race.
Okay.
There's GTP, there's LMP2, GT Pro, and GTAM.
Okay.
So GT Pro
It's about
is
as
where-
Well,
this
that
is about
can't-
as confusing as tire situation in a NASCAR or an
I know,
IndyCar race.
I know. So
Well,
so
David,
AO
technically
Racing.
GTD Pro. and
I don't
GTD.
call the D is pointless. The
Hold
D
on,
is
he's
useless.
cooking, Kyle.
The D is useless. We
The
don't have to
Riz
call it
is out.
We don't have to call it GT Daytona anymore. We can just call it GT. Anyway, I really sound like I'm hating Daytona. I don't mean to. AO Racing is a team that has been around a little bit under different guises, but they became AO Racing in 2023. They debuted at Daytona and Sebring in 2023 with fairly bland liveries. It was like a tribute to like the Preston Hen swap shop cars, if you remember that. I think AJ Foyt won the Rolex in that car. So at Sebring, they had a split livery. They had their regular kind of white and orange livery, and then with the World Endurance Championship, and then with Sebring, they debuted Rexy. So in 2023, that was Rexy's debut. And Rexy became this huge, enormous sensation right away. All the kids loved it. It was actually the gentleman driver who drives for AO Racing, PJ Hyatt's idea. He has some young daughters, and he said, I want to create a car that looks good for my daughters. And excites
Excellent
them.
marketing. Love
One
it.
of the most amazing marketing stunts ever in sports car racing.
Can we get Joseph Newgard in a Bluey car?
We
Continue.
could. We get to Daytona of this year. So Rexy's been racing for 2 years. They are now selling their own merch. They brought a merchandise trailer to Daytona full of merch. They sold out before the race. Sold out. They left. So this is a huge marketing thing. Now behind the scenes, AO Racing, to their credit, has been very protective of the Rexy copyright, in which they should be, because it is, that dinosaur car has become synonymous with their team. It has become one of the biggest sensations in sports car racing. But they get a little aggressive on social media when anyone even remotely kind of gets up on that copyright. For example, what happened this weekend.
Okay.
So, to your point, Rexy knocked his teeth off in the last race at Daytona, and AO Racing, making a bit of a light of the situation, Rexy now has braces because he had to get some dental work done. It's funny. It's cute.
I like it.
We all like it, right? What could possibly be wrong about this? Well, what was wrong about it was a fan quoted that tweet and said, I'm going to bring my car to Sebring, and I'm going to put teeth on my car like Rexy. And I guess I'm going to have to edit. I guess I'm going to have to put some braces on the car. Isn't that cute? Isn't that an awesome thing for a fan to do? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So what
Sure.
did AO Racing do? They responded and said, no, you shouldn't do that. We have the copyright on Rexy. You cannot put teeth on your car. Make sure to respect our copyright. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but I seem to remember like World War II planes that have teeth on them.
Yeah,
all
it's
sorts
not their
of race
original
cars.
idea.
It's not an original idea. The teeth themselves aren't an original idea. But more to the point, how many Dale Earnhardt replica cars have you seen out in the world?
Oh, a crap ton.
And isn't Teresa Earnhardt one of the most hardcore copyright hounds of all time?
Have you ever seen a guy here in Indianapolis that drives around 465 in his 05 Chevy that's decked out like Jimmy Johnson's 48 Lowe's car? It's
There
great.
you go. What a great way to pay tribute to a race car that you like.
Yeah.
AO Racing yells at this person on Twitter, and immediately it goes wrong for them. They are getting
Lost a few
ratioed.
fans, I would imagine.
People are like selling their Rexy merch. It's a disaster.
What does ratio mean? We might have some older gentlemen and ladies watching.
So for
the
those
show.
of you who are watching from Facebook, a ratio means that when you put something out on Twitter, you get more replies that are in a negative sense than a positive sense. Okay,
we're an equal age opportunity
can't
show
believe
here.
that.
at Unverified.
equal opportunity. So they're getting ratioed. So they delete this tweet.
Of course, that's the word. Hold on. You know you're going to get me going on don't be delete tweet guy or girl because that drives me nuts. At least own your stuff.
Oh, no.
Don't delete it.
Oh,
Go
no.
on.
They did not own it. Then they put out a 3-paragraph statement about how...
Sounds like somebody else who works in the IndyCar journalism world.
It's
Continue.
wild. A 3-paragraph...
Did you end up seeing the end of the story though? Did you see what happened?
Oh, no, I know. I saw it.
You're gonna get
I saw
there?
it. Well, we're gonna get
Are you
there.
gonna get there?
We're gonna get there. I gotta explain what's going on.
Oh,
first.
I was making sure.
Yeah, I know. The kicker is, so they put out the statement, right?
Yep.
And it's like total PR disaster.
Yep.
Total PR
Sounds like
disaster.
it.
Which is crazy because again, you would think the team that sells the most merch, that is supposedly the most fan friendly, would have this kind of figured out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, this stuff like this keeps happening. I
They
don't
made
know
a
why.
damn Hot Wheels car that is in like stores and like is actually not in stores because so many people freaking bought it and it was so hard to find.
Well, you're not losing money by a fan of yours putting teeth on your car. You should have owned it. You should have brought the drivers out there to sign it and made something cool out of it. But continue.
Well, so here's what my most obvious, and this is free advice because I think they should do this because I think it would save a lot of face. There's something at IMSA races with manufacturers that a lot of manufacturers do. Porsche does it. They have a Porsche Plots. It's where you buy a ticket, an extra ticket, and park your Porsche. They have Corvette Corral. You can bring your Mustang. Hyundai has a club. So all of these different manufacturers have parking lots that they sell a higher ticket and they get a little bit of access. The easiest thing in the world would be because to your point, AO Racing, even if they own the copyright on the teeth and everything associated with Rexy, they're not going to open AO Racing like wrap shops where they could sell.
Exactly.
But there is a way to make money, and it's have a Rexy corral. Encourage people to make their cars into different animals, or who cares if they make a Rexy and show up at the racetrack? You should be encouraging that, but sell them a damn ticket to the Rexy corral. It would be the most popular thing ever. Put your merchandise tent in there. There's a way to pivot from this and get away with it, but right now they're not pivoting. And the kicker, I guess I'll let Kyle.
Kyle, you got to clip that. Send it to AO Racing. That's free advice for them.
They might see it.
Also, first, so to the defense of AO Racing, and not saying that I believe in this, but just to be the voice on what they said in their paragraphs, that the reasoning they were so strict about this is because they don't want a Rexy wrapped car to be doing anything heinous on the streets and for.
They're protective of the brand.
To be protecting of the brand. So, like, I mean, what do you think about it? And then I'll bring it back to me, and I'll close to the finishing of the finish on Twitter is pretty great. This is a pretty great story.
So here's, I guess, the one point of contention I would have with that is, do you really think your fans are, like, why are you assuming the worst in your fans? Yeah. I mean, and how far does this extend? Because I could go on iRacing, put a Rexy livery on my car, and drive backwards into the field. And make you look terrible. I don't want to do that, but somebody would do that, right? How does this extend?
Well, if you're going to police that, are you going to police everything, and you're just not going to have the time, the resources to be able to do that? So they just need to stand up and say, look, we screwed up. We appreciate what you've done. We appreciate you being a fan. Give the dude some merch and a meet and greet with the drivers and a picture with the Rexy car and call it a day and move on because it's just a bad look to the rest of your fans as well.
Well, here's where the kicker is.
Here's the kicker.
Here's the kicker because AO Racing didn't do that, but another team did.
Ooh,
yeah,
good.
So
who did it? Because shout out to them. Let's give them some credit.
Rexy, the teeth wrap was actually a Photoshop. Like, they didn't actually do it. So the tweet from like a day, I think it was a day ago, Faf Racing with their plaid Lamborghini.
Perfect.
Gave them free tickets to the race.
Beautiful.
And they wrapped the hood of their car in plaid.
Perfect.
PRW.
Absolutely how you should do it. I'm sorry because I'm not. Are those two teams like rivals?
In the same class?
Perfect.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely perfect.
So,
shout out to Faf Motorsports.
Here's the kicker.
Buy their merch.
Here's the kicker about Faf Motorsports. They had a pretty ugly breakup with Porsche.
Okay.
So
even better. Even better.
This is the whole thing. There's a lot of lore here.
Yep.
So you know what? There's a lot of hate
Faf.
in GTD Pro right now. You got Corvette hating BMW. You got
so they're going to come together on the racetrack this weekend at some point.
1,000%. 1,000%. You know what? Here's the thing, and it's not unprecedented because it's happened before in GT. We could have two GT cars coming off the final corner rubbing tires.
Yeah.
If it's Rexy and the Faf car, I've got goosebumps already.
I'm going for
what
the
an
Faf
amazing
car.
story. Yeah, I think a lot of
Give
people,
me the Faf car.
I think
Kyle,
a
did
lot
you
of
want to
people
make
will
one
be.
more comment on this before we move on?
No, I think we got it all.
Okay.
We
All
can
right.
move on.
Well, somebody who stayed hot over the weekend at Phoenix was Christopher Bell, winning. Should have been his 4th straight race because he got taken out by Cole Custer and whatever Cole's doing inside of that car every weekend. Wins his 3rd straight race at Phoenix. I thought it was a really good race. Wasn't the closest finish at Phoenix, but it was very close. It was very entertaining down the stretch. That was the big news, I thought, coming out. But something else that stole the spotlight, unfortunately at times, was the debut of Catherine Legg inside of the 78 machine for Live Fast Racing, BJ McLeod-owned team. She spun out early. Car was a little bit too tight. Look, I'm not sure why she didn't run the ARCA race. I haven't asked that. I probably should. But look, you never want to be the person who's a couple laps down and gets in the way of somebody's top 10 day. And I think Catherine would be the first person to tell you that's the last thing that she would want to do. That's the last thing. And she was at the 28th. She was learning. You only get 25 minutes of practice. So it's not like, she's been driving for years inside of those cars. It was very unfortunate. It almost ruined Josh Berry's day. I think he ended up still top 7, maybe top 5. I can't remember exactly where he finished.
It did ruin Daniel Suarez's day.
It did ruin Daniel Suarez's top 10 day. Which was very unfortunate. There was a lot of back and forth on social media, a lot of hate towards Catherine. There's a lot of drivers that have made a lot of mistakes, and there are a lot of drivers that make that mistake that have been in the series for a long time. It was unfortunate that she took out Daniel Suarez. There's no getting around that. I totally understand that and understand where they would be upset. But you learn, you move on, and there's a lot of drivers inside the Cup Series right now that have made similar mistakes. But you just hope that doesn't happen again. I know that Catherine does want to run more NASCAR races this season. We'll talk about her chances of landing an Indianapolis 500 ride coming up here in a little bit Unverified. But what were your overall thoughts on the weekend that was NASCAR-wise in Phoenix?
Well, I think NASCAR has had a pretty good season to this point. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. I think the races...
Besides the fact that Christopher Bell's won 3.
Well, here's the thing.
Which I like C. Bell, so I have no problem
Well, let's have that discussion because I think that, Christopher Bell's a little bit of a boring winner for sure. Like, I don't really get excited when Christopher Bell wins a race. Mm-hmm. But I can't deny that he's having a hell of a run right now.
Yep.
And I think there's something to be said about greatness kind of overcoming whether or not someone's boring. And right now, Christopher Bell's having a great season. And the races he's won haven't been...
Don't worry, the chase will screw that up for him.
100%. We can talk about... I mean, ideologically, I hate stages. I hate, the chase. I hate all of it. But, if you look at those last stages for the last few races of this season, I mean, outside the Daytona 500, you look at Atlanta, COTA, and Phoenix. How can you deny that those are entertaining races? And they are. And so Christopher Bell has won every single one of them. And to your point, he could have won Daytona, should have won Daytona. And, unlike Jeff Gordon in 1998, which is the last really super duper dominant season we've seen in NASCAR, he's not winning these things by a mile. He's winning them by inches in most of these cases. So I don't know. Good for him. I think it's going to be interesting to see how his season progresses if he can kind of keep this up. And of course, once we get to September and the playoffs, chances are something stupid is going to happen and he's not going to win the championship, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of 10-minute videos on YouTube explaining why that's stupid. Maybe I'll make one of them.
Yeah.
Catherine Legg, I want to talk about this because there's a couple of things that I have curiosity on. Number one, what are we trying to do with Catherine in NASCAR?
Agreed.
Because we kind of brought up the possibility of her doing the double. Maybe that's a value add for an Indy 500 sponsor. We'll see. Why start at Phoenix? Because that's what I don't... Yes, Phoenix, in terms of Cup, is a kind of an intermediate track, but it's not really. It's one of the toughest tracks on the schedule. Isn't there like a graduation where you have to... she had to run the ARCA race in Daytona, and then in order to run... you start with the shorter ovals, and then you move yourself up. I think that's kind of how it does.
Sure.
And maybe Phoenix is... the only thing I think with Phoenix is you just have more room to spread out.
It's a tough track.
I think everyone forgets that Catherine Legg ran Xfinity races in 2019. She ran a good chunk of Xfinity races on road courses, and I think she ran Iowa or she ran a short oval. I think it was only been a NASCAR driver before.
I think it was only Road America and maybe Elkhart.
She definitely did Mid Ohio.
Maybe Mid Ohio as well.
So why didn't she run COTA last week?
Agreed.
That's
yeah. It's very confusing. And look, we like Catherine, but it's one thing. She's good on. She's ran IndyCar ovals. She's obviously her background, as Kyle mentioned earlier, is IMSA in sports cars, and that's where she's had the most success. So, if the goal is to run the double, which I think is kind of crazy, then okay, I guess I understand. But if the goal is to just learn and run in Cup for 5, 6, 7 races, don't road and I guess street courses, but certainly road courses make a little bit more sense for her.
I don't know. I mean, I go back to, I don't think it's the wrong idea to take her to an oval track.
Yeah, no.
But there's got to be an easier oval to get your feet wet than Phoenix.
Yeah.
And also, you look at how many variables there were for the NASCAR Cup guys with the different tire compounds and I don't know. I just don't think that was the right call. And maybe that was the only race that was available to her with her schedule, BJ McLeod's schedule. There's a lot of the sponsor might have wanted to be in Phoenix. There's all of these factors, but at the end of the day...
Why wasn't she in the ARCA race?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. And that's one, again, you just have to... I mean, again, it's probably money.
Okay.
Who's going to pay for it?
I understand that, but if you're a sponsor, which I'm not sure who her sponsor was, I looked them up, I think it's some kind of consulting firm, couldn't really tell. But... If you're a team owner in ARCA, don't you get more exposure and more people looking at your team and your brand with a Catherine Legg in the car as opposed to somebody that we've never heard of in ARCA? Wouldn't that make sense? Couldn't there be money found, I think? It can't be all that much to run an ARCA race at Phoenix, okay? And I'm sorry, I know that you probably have drivers that have committed, but you couldn't say, all right, you're going to hop out of the car because we're going to put her in. Maybe there's some cash tied to it. They're going to mention us on the broadcast 4 or 5 more times than what they would with Tony Donohue in the race car. Maybe I need to ask, but I think a really good opportunity to gain track time there would have been to run the ARCA race.
Well, here's the thing about ARCA, and I think it's part of why the business model in ARCA doesn't make any sense.
That was my finger.
What?
I don't know if that picked up in the microphone, but I moved my finger and it was just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Continue. Okay. We're very professional here on Unverified.
The problem with ARCA is that Cletus McFarland can go out and get more viewers on a YouTube video for him racing in ARCA and not be able to put together if Cletus McFarland had wanted to run Phoenix, would he have been able to put that together? I don't know, maybe. Yeah. Why isn't he full season? I guess maybe he just doesn't want to do it, but I think that's the problem right now he
had a big thing down in Florida over the weekend. So.
Well, there you go. I think you have a bit of an issue right now with the difference between being able to actually bring eyeballs to, for example, Catherine, if that's your argument, versus actually being able to bring in the cash to do it.
Yeah.
And do it right. So if you had the cash and your choice is ARCA or Cup, what is the sponsor going to choose? They're going to choose Cup every... But you put Catherine in a bad spot because she goes out and spins in the first 4 laps, which that was a bad look. And then the one time the commentators are talking about her showing a car on the screen, you self-spin and crash one of the top 10 cars. That's tough, man. It's tough. And that's how you get a perception. Yeah. And that perception is hard to overcome.
Today we learned that Takuma Sato will drive the number 75 Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing Honda in the 109th Indianapolis 500. Ironically, came out 75 days till the Indianapolis 500. Womp, womp. Something that you and I mentioned on this show was going to happen. It's great to see Takuma Sato, the 2-time Indianapolis 500 winner, back. As I mentioned, I would... and maybe he doesn't know, but I would like for him to have a proper send-off. I don't know if that's just maybe me bringing up something that really doesn't matter, but he is a 2-time winner and really didn't get the love and the due that he deserved for winning that 2020 race. But that does, importantly enough, David, put us at 34 entries. So Rahal is taking the risk of possibly bumping out one of their full-time competitors. Obviously, that's worst-case scenario for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, and which they have seen over the last couple of years, does sometimes come to light. The latest with Catherine is there is money there. Just putting all the pieces, I think, of the puzzle together have not been complete. And here we stand, a little bit more than a month away from the Indianapolis 500 tests in April. But your overall thoughts on Sato being back and where we stand on the 2025 Indianapolis 500 entry list?
I'm happy to see bumping. I think we're going to get into a little bit of a debate about bumping, but I think it's important. I think when you look at the Indianapolis 500, we've got to hold on to the traditions that are left, because at the end of the day, that's when you have the spotlight on you the most, is the Indianapolis 500. I think Takuma Sato, to your point, he kind of feels like I don't know if Takuma would really want a send-off, quote unquote. He's a low-key guy. You know, he's a very good
I don't think it matters
guy.
if he wants it. It just matters if he deserves it.
Well, I think he deserves it for sure, but it seems like he just keeps coming back. He's and I'm fine with that. I think Takuma Sato should be able to run this thing as long as he wants. I think he's going to be a benefit to the Rahal team.
Yep.
But to your point, there is that opportunity that you might be in a position where you're bumping yourself out. And Takuma Sato was pretty easily safe in the field last year. Kind of interested, as I mentioned on last week's show, what's the dynamic going to be like with Graham this year? Because Graham seemed to be a little bit upset about Sato being on the team and maybe some of the advantages he had on the team last year. We'll see how that dynamic works. I'm sure we'll ask him about it in April. But I think it's going to be all right. I hope Catherine puts that program together. I know I'll be able to going to be in the same spot as a lot of key players in that particular discussion this weekend. So I hope I'll be able to get a few more answers on how likely it is Catherine will or will not be in the Indianapolis 500 this year. I hope it happens, because I think 35 is a better number than 34, and I think there's some intrigue there. And we know her sponsor is willing to show up and show out, so I think they need to be at least have a chance of getting in the race.
Well, there is a debate on whether or not, if there's 34 cars from a business standpoint, if you send one home, and there's a lot of people out there that think, you don't want to send a driver or a sponsor home, even though it might be a B2B sponsor or whatever it is. And is IndyCar really in a position to do that? But you do want to keep traditions alive. I don't know how excited I'm going to be about one car being bumped in an hour-long session where the back row goes out, and if that 34th car wads it up in the fence like we saw last year, and there really isn't any drama besides that, or if that 34th car is 2.5 miles an hour off the pace, how excited I'm going to be about that. But we shall see when the official entry list comes out. I would imagine that's in the next month or so, with the test being next month. But speaking of IndyCar, speaking of Fox, the NHRA over the weekend opened up in Gainesville, and the talk of the strip, so to speak, if you want to call it that, was some comments from a certain driver about the fastest racing or fastest motorsports in the world, David.
So, I was kind of surprised that this happened, but the NHRA controls their feed on Fox.
Yes.
So Bob Tasca III got out of his PPG Ford Mustang, stood on the little Mission Foods circle.
Never heard of this guy before. I'm sorry. I follow NHRA a little bit.
We're just going right in on him, huh? We're just going right at him. Okay.
He had a good looking PPG Ford, that's for sure.
So Tasca gets out of that car, and he gets the mic. Amanda Busick hands him the mic, and he says, I got something to say.
Yep.
I'm disappointed with the way Fox is broadcasting our sport. I don't believe IndyCar's the fastest racing on earth, because that's us. It's an insult to our fans here at the NHRA, and I thought Fox wasn't the fake news network, and I'm hearing a lot of fake news. So,
not something you want to say when I think Fox's contract is up with you at the end of the year?
Somebody told me it's a contract year, but some of the folks on the NHRA side
doesn't
said
matter.
It doesn't
matter.
Crapping on
you
the
don't want to
broadcaster.
say that. Yeah. Look, I do understand where they would be a little bit felt like they were kind of put on the back burner. By that being said, and we can sit here and debate all day long, they're going 330 for 6 seconds, and then they're out of the car, and half these guys are out of shape and look like they just got out from, whatever. But I understand where they maybe were rubbed the wrong way by how Fox went ahead and said that IndyCar is the fastest motorsports on the planet. Now, there is a time and place, and you don't do it on Fox, and you mention what you mentioned. That is not a good look. He should be fined. I think there should be a fine for that.
Who's going to fine him?
I don't know. Maybe
NHRA ain't going to fine him.
Well,
what's crazy about Bob Tasca saying this? Two things. First thing I have to say is it's funny that this was the biggest moment of NHRA's weekend. That them putting that clip on Twitter got over 300,000 views.
Yeah.
And their most viewed clip after that was 21,000.
Yeah.
So it's funny that their
People love drama.
only viral clip of the weekend was about IndyCar.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because from our perspective, like, we know how IndyCar views go. Wow. And also, Bob Tasca in one of the runs did a 2:09, which is in fact not faster than Indy cars. And also, last thing I'm going to say on this, if you're mad about the tagline, fastest racing on earth, you should have used it first.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to defend NHRA a little bit.
Oh,
I
boy.
know. Oh, my God. The IndyCar guy is going to defend NHRA. I am.
Mighty Max, you ever seen the Leonardo DiCaprio thing going like this, the meme? That's Mighty Mac right now.
I would guarantee he's doing that. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. So, number one, because I used to be, beating the drum about IndyCar. It's, oh, this is the best thing ever. No one knows about it. And we get treated like the redheaded stepchild by NASCAR. Like, trust me, I've been that guy. I understand exactly where the NHRA, its fans, its drivers, its teams are feeling right now because if you like the NHRA, I would be pissed off, and you have a right to be pissed off. Was it the right time and place? Well, I'd say this: 330,000 views. You can't say that that's wrong.
They're probably in the background going, 300,000 views. That's awesome.
I mean, you got the message out there, right?
We don't like that you did it, but we're kind of glad you did.
But here I'm going to make this point, and I hate that I'm saying this because I do agree that if we're going to start playing the semantics game, then we need to start talking about air racing and land speed racing, and what
Kyle
is
Kirkwood.
actually the fate. I know Kyle Kirkwood had a great point, but here's the other point I'm going to make. If IndyCar really wants to claim they're the fastest racing on earth, which
is IndyCar claiming that, or is Fox claiming
Fox.
that for them?
That's
Okay.
but Fox is going to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's like IndyCar's entire marketing scheme is Fox right now.
Yeah.
So by extension, until IndyCar does their own marketing on with separate of Fox, this is the marketing department right now. Okay. So when I look at what Fox is saying, and I say, okay, well, IndyCar. You can make the argument IndyCar is the fastest racing on earth because there's no other racing in the world that you have 3+ hours of 200+ mile per hour racing. You are a caution-free Indy 500 from a 200 mile per hour average speed at the Indianapolis 500, above 200 miles an hour. That's with pit stops.
Losing 10 pounds.
Got
to be in shape.
But here's the thing.
Top-notch athletes.
Here's the thing, Tony. You do that once a year. You put those super speedway wings and run 230 miles an hour once a year.
Yep.
Can you really claim you're the fastest racing on earth when you do it once a year?
But it's not like that's the only time that they reach 200 miles an hour.
When else do they hit 200 miles an hour? They might touch it at Gateway. Where else do they hit 200 miles an hour in IndyCar racing in current year?
All right. So
What do you
point
mean
taken.
They touch it at Gateway, don't they?
Yeah, no, that's
literally
like
do 200 over 200. They
No.
literally do.
No, they don't do over. They're not averaging 200 miles an hour at Gateway.
Maybe not in the race.
not. I don't think
Not
on
in
average,
qualifying
but
either. No way.
You
No
don't
way.
think they touch 200 on the back? Yeah.
They touch it. It's not sustained. That's like saying, well, that's the entire
So
argument
you're
with
saying
drag racing.
you're
is they
saying
go, they
but,
go 330
so you're
miles an hour.
saying you're saying IndyCar. So drag racing, they go 300 miles an hour every week, 4 times a week, 4 times a weekend for a total of what 18 seconds?
Right.
Okay. So the whole fastest the fastest racing in motorsports, or whatever the tagline is, fastest motorsports on the planet. The problem is with that is you're going but it's a attention grabber for the average fan.
Right.
That's what it is, to bring them in. To the hardcore fan, which are probably who's listening right now,
For sure,
obviously you.
Yeah.
You're going, oh well, there's this, that, and this, and that, and that, and that. At the end of the day, there's always just been rivalry from motorsport to motorsport. I mean, how many times have there been like a NASCAR IndyCar rivalry, and NASCAR fans think IndyCar sucks, and IndyCar fans think NASCAR is just a bunch of taxis going around.
Everybody
whatever it
hates
is.
Formula One.
Everybody hates
They
Formula One.
love it. They love to hate Formula One.
And
They're all going to be watching.
The only
it
time
on
we've
Pro.
ever kumbaya'd and got along is when Doug Bowles brought IndyCar and NASCAR to the same weekend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
That was not kumbaya. What are you talking about? Wait a second.
Oh, here we go.
No.
You know what? No, I don't want to hear this. I don't want you to go into this bull crap that you always do about, I know exactly the facts and all this.
No.
What I'm saying is
Half of the
that was
fans-
a week.
Half
you
of the
didn't
fans,
talk to half the
when
fans.
they showed up.
No.
You
Listen to me.
could see it.
No.
When the Xfinity race, when the IndyCar race
IndyCar
let out,
was-
everybody was leaving, and there was people coming in and leaving at the same time.
That's not my
it was
point.
Two different crowds.
You take everybody's point Like you have to be so specific about it. What I'm saying is, Doug brought those series
details.
to the
What can I
same
say?
weekend. Yeah, but it's details that don't matter that you like. I could be like, yo, dude, Taco Bell has the best quesadilla. Like, no, it's too burnt. Like, who cares? It is the best. Here's the deal. They were all at the same place in the same weekend, okay? Mm-hmm. They were all together. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's a vague point. It's not, give me, oh, well, they put IndyCar over here as the redheaded stepchild. And that's not the point. Uh-huh. The point is, from the fans' perspective that were on the outside looking in, those two series, the whole point was that those two series were at the same place for the same weekend. That's the only time it seemed like there hasn't been a rivalry. Now, you can go in and give me your spiel on all this. No, go ahead. But, like, I don't think people want to hear that.
Well, I think our audience wants to hear that.
I'm not so sure.
Audience is entertained right now.
Yeah, they should be. This is entertaining.
So, so back to your point.
Yeah.
The Kumbaya.
Yes.
Okay. It seemed to me that weekend was pretty successful. Did it ever happen again? No. So maybe it wasn't successful. But there was a way to bring a lot of those fans together and try to maybe, I don't know if mend fences is the right term, but I thought it was cool that happened, and that hasn't happened in any other form of motorsports that kind of rivals each other. So what was so wrong about that weekend?
Well, it was the wrong track.
Okay, cool.
It was the wrong track. It was.
But it was IMS.
Yeah, it wasn't the oval.
Okay, well, you're not going to ever have that. That's like,
well, yeah.
You're gonna run the Brickyard 400 Memorial Day weekend.
They should have done that.
You're gonna run Indianapolis 400.
They should have done that in 2020. They should have had the Indy 500 and the Brickyard 400.
That's crazy.
Yeah. They could have done that, and they didn't do it. But whatever.
Cool with that.
That's a deep cut.
If you're gonna not have fans,
I understand.
Make it worthwhile. But no, here's the thing. I would do it like Texas, Michigan, somewhere where Indy cars can really be impressive, and some place that Cup can be impressive. IndyCar and Cup are not impressive on the IMS road course. That's
but
why
the only place for those to all come together and be happy is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the relationship that Roger has with NASCAR, Doug bringing those things together. It was the place that made the most sense. Not about how great the racetrack was or how crap the racetrack was. It's about that was the only place that it's ever happened and probably will ever happen.
So let's have an NHRA IndyCar crossover race at Gateway, and
I think that would be great for both sports.
Kumbaya,
baby.
baby.
Sick.
I mean, it's right there. I would be in for that 100%. You want to do an NHRA? I mean, Fox doesn't have to employ that many people that weekend because they're already going to be there.
The only thing that's tough about that is the way the drag strip goes into the fan village stuff in the back. I feel like that would probably intrude on the IndyCar weekend a little bit, but that's a great idea.
Give me somewhere where they could like. What if we turn the back like who has can we turn a backstretch somewhere into a drag strip?
You're gonna hate me for saying this, but since you've been such a jerk this 10 minutes, I'm gonna say it.
What?
Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
Agreed.
No, I'll be honest.
Or give me a place where they don't currently have like a drag strip.
You could do it at IMS. You could do it on the backstretch.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so
that'd be crazy.
What about? Yeah, I don't think
there's enough room.
Lucas Oil Raceway would probably roll over on that one.
They would, yeah, which is owned by the NHRA, so that's never gonna happen. Yeah.
But okay, so but my point to the whole thing was, look, there's always going to be rivalry in motorsports. I understand it. It's not about the details of how good the racing was or what happened. It's the fact that that happened in IMS and it came together. But I think IndyCar fans are going, okay, well, cool. We pay attention to NHRA once a year because we go out, because we live in Indianapolis. We go out to Claremont on Labor Day weekend. And I think
they're going to be in Nashville this year.
Yeah. So I think they were last year too, because
they were in Milwaukee.
Or Milwaukee, yeah, because we came back and went on Monday. I'm not sure how NHRA fans look at IndyCar. I would imagine they like the Indianapolis 500 and they come to it. But man, I mean, it wasn't a good look. But again, you're right though. 300,000 views on one post. I mean, it's kind of like, hey, don't like that you said that.
I mean, I think the way I would tie a bow on this is that I put myself in that position.
Yeah.
Put yourself in that position because I'll say this, Tony. How about this? Because you've mentioned this a couple of times. is NHRA, the way NHRA is being treated right now by Fox, is that a harbinger of things to come for IndyCar? Is that how IndyCar is going to feel in, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years from now. Is that are we looking at where IndyCar's relationship ends with Fox?
We hope not. But here's one for you. Let me take it one level.
Because are we all going to take all this back when it happens? I mean, that's all I'm saying.
Well, and we talked last week about how important the Thermal and Long Beach, those type of ratings are going up against the major events in the United States, and you want to deliver because you don't want to be an FS1 next year. Isn't the ESPN F1 contract, is that gone?
After this year?
After this year? So what if Fox decides to make a bid for Formula One? And they go all in on that, and they want to be this hardcore motorsports channel. That's certainly going to push IndyCar to the side.
Formula One would, but I don't. I think Netflix is going to get the contract. I would be very surprised.
But just saying,
like a hypothetical.
My hypothetical.
Oh, IndyCar would get pushed to the side.
You
like
would be little brothered so hard.
Yeah. Now, would maybe it help IndyCar to maybe be, depending on timing, and I know it probably wouldn't line up as much as we would love it to do. If that were to be the case, obviously it probably won't, because you mentioned that Netflix is probably going to grab that. But maybe some form of lead-in to Formula One. I think, wasn't Monaco on ABC, and then the Indianapolis 500 came on right after that?
Yeah, there was like 1 year where that happened.
Yeah.
There was like 1 year where that happened. It's weird. Like the Formula One contract always seems to like go to the other network. Like they were on NBC, but then IndyCar got the NBC contract, and away went Formula One to ESPN. So, yeah, I don't think, and quite honestly, if I'm Liberty Media, unless I own IndyCar, I don't want IndyCar anywhere near me.
Well, you and I have had some discussions about if that were to ever happen. Before we wrap up here on Unverified, Kyle, anybody in the chat ripping us? Anybody with some good hot topics? Maybe some good hot takes on the things that we've discussed here on this episode?
Not a lot of hot takes. I mean, everyone seemed to enjoy your disagreement. Mom and Dad were fighting for a little bit. That was pretty fun.
I know how to get Dave. I know how to push David's buttons.
Yeah. Just a lot of discussion on NHRA. The greatest input from the chat on where we should put a drag strip was Portland.
Portland?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Portland
I mean,
front straight.
You know what I thought.
That would never happen.
You know what I thought of?
Too loud.
This one isn't going to be a popular one, but I think, I don't know if this track has a drag strip, but like a Pocono.
Ooh.
You got plenty of room. That's for
sure. You got plenty of room at Pocono.
Ain't no sound ordinance in Pocono.
There's no sound ordinance out there. I think the bleachers towards the end of the IndyCar stint there weren't as full. I did watch one race that I know they had a rain delay. They ran back on Monday, so obviously that's going to affect. But I think that would be a fun little motorsports weekend.
Let me say something about Pocono. I get it. There's a lot of it. Much like we're going to always have the discussion about XYZ, and there's definitely safety improvements.
Kentucky has massive parking lots.
But here's the thing about Pocono. That grandstand held 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it maybe didn't look all that great on TV,
there's
probably 30,000-40,000 people there on race day. Or we would kill for that right now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. There's some. It's weird.
Look, it's never going to happen. Okay, first of all, none of this is ever going to happen.
We used to say that Pocono was never going to happen before it happened again. Yeah. Nobody in 2013 was saying, "Oh yeah, they're going to go back to Pocono," right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think and this is a discussion I had with someone. About Phoenix. I said, Phoenix should probably be the season opener right after the Super Bowl. And somebody said, oh, the crowd would be terrible. There's a NASCAR race. And I say, we're already racing at Thermal Club in a made-for-TV race. What's wrong with doing a made-for-TV race at Phoenix or Pocono? And who cares how many people show up? Let's put something on TV, spread the schedule out a little bit, and show the fans a little bit more oval racing. That's what I say.
Do some TV revenue share with the track to be able to promote some of those things. All right.
One question from Sky Warren.
Hello,
they've
Sky.
asked a couple times, so I want to get it answered. Peretta Autosport, what's the deal? Have we heard anything about them recently at all?
I haven't. I mean, I know Beth was here about a month and a half ago for the Ladies in Motorsports convention, but I haven't heard anything. And I know Roger backed that entry with Simona, and that has been brought up to me. Like, okay, Roger kind of did that to get Simona in the car. Would he be able to step up and possibly get something with Catherine in? I haven't heard any of that. I don't
think Catherine would work with Beth anyway because
no. I'm not. Yeah. I'm just saying. Would Roger kind of help out getting Catherine into IndyCar, as just like Roger helped Beth Peretta get into an entry and I believe that chassis was that a Penske chassis that
It was the it was the Juncos car,
Yeah.
the Kyle Kaiser car that was taken to Penske
Okay.
and like retrofitted to be the 2020 spec car.
Okay.
But I mean,
I haven't heard anything else
no.
outside of that.
I mean, so there's a couple of like subtleties to the Peretta Autosport thing that I don't think a lot of people know. Beth Peretta was the head of motorsports at Dodge when Penske was running Dodges.
Dodge coming back to NASCAR?
They are, believe it or not.
My
they
dad knows some things sometimes. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. So Beth Peretta had that connection to Roger,
Okay.
and so part of the reason that happened in the first place was that Beth had been trying to make that happen. Again, one of the drivers at one point was Catherine Legg, ended up falling through with Peretta Autosport, but Beth was persistent and finally made a pitch that landed on Roger's ears and got it going. But I don't know if Brian Hurd Autosport would have that same. Now, here's the thing. What kind of concerns me about the thing with Catherine is Catherine has a real sponsor, a sponsor that activated at the Speedway last year.
Massively.
How can you not put together a deal to make that happen? I don't know. Again, we can talk back rooms, and it might happen still without Roger's help. And maybe they know that. Sometimes, believe it or not, they actually know more than we do.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I don't think Peretta Autosport hasn't been a thing for a very, very long time. I know they tried. What was that? Was that 22 or 23? What was the year after? So they ran in 2021.
What was the year? Was it 2021 when they had the big press conference about how it was going to be a fully female team, and then they kind of backed off of that for a while.
What year did Peretta Autosport run? Was that 21?
21.
21.
Yep.
So then they tried in 22, but they couldn't put anything together, and then it faded away from there.
Look, last thing on Catherine, it's a great point. Look, you've got to have all five, right? You've got to have the crew, you got to have the car, you got to have the engine, you got to have the sponsor, you got to have the driver. They have some of those things.
I'd say it would be about 4 of the 5 if I was to guess.
Yeah, and I think it's where it's at. My gut tells me that it'll get pushed across the finish line, but time's a ticking. Time is a ticking. We're going. I was talking with somebody who has a lot of IndyCar experience, and he was like, you got to get it done. You've got to push that thing across the finish line. It would be hard for me to believe that a sponsor, as you mentioned, that activated so well at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, got a lot of new female audience, a lot of new female perspective. Elf, obviously, a well-known cosmetic brand on board. That you wouldn't be able to step up and find the resources and find what you need to get Catherine on the 2025 Indianapolis 500 entry list. So we shall see. I know you're ready for Sebring. Make sure you're following David. He's going to have awesome videos all weekend. The IMSA Riz is going to be out in full force for him.
I rated a 7.5.
It's
going to be.
I think you're going to have.
It could go higher.
I think you're going to have a better time with that. You put a little lipstick on, and you're gonna love it. There's no doubt about it. Kyle, thank you so much for your help. As always, we'll have clips throughout the week. Please subscribe here on YouTube, and we'll see you next week on Unverified.
Get us to 1,000 subscribers. Let's go.